The Opium Wars, a series of conflicts waged between the Qing dynasty of China and Western powers, primarily Great Britain, in the mid-19th century, were not simply wars of conquest, but rather the culmination of decades of evolving trade imbalances, diplomatic misunderstandings, and, ultimately, a clash of fundamentally different worldviews regarding commerce and sovereignty. Prior to the 18th century, China enjoyed a favorable balance of trade with Europe, offering coveted goods like tea, silk, porcelain, and lacquerware in exchange for silver. European demand for Chinese products was insatiable, fueling economic growth within China and establishing a complex network of merchant companies, most notably the powerful British East India Company. However, by the late 18th and early 19th centuries, the British found themselves facing a growing trade deficit. They were importing significantly more from China than they were exporting. This imbalance was exacerbated by China's relative lack of interest in European manufactured goods, which were often perceived as inferior to their own domestic products. Silver, the traditional medium of exchange, began to flow out of Britain and into China, threatening the British economy and creating a pressing need for a new source of revenue. The British turned to opium, a highly addictive narcotic grown in British India, as a solution to their trade woes. Opium had long been traded in China, although it was officially banned several times throughout its history, often due to concerns about its social and economic impact. The East India Company, holding a monopoly on opium production in Bengal, began to illegally smuggle increasing quantities of the drug into China, primarily through the port of Canton, Guangzhou. Initially, the trade was small-scale, but it rapidly expanded as demand soared among the Chinese population, driven by its addictive properties and the establishment of opium dens. The illicit opium trade reversed the flow of silver. It now flowed into China, but with devastating consequences for the Chinese economy and society. The influx of silver destabilized the Chinese monetary system, led to widespread corruption among officials who accepted bribes to turn a blind eye to the trade, and drained the nation's wealth. The social effects were even more profound, as opium addiction became rampant, affecting all levels of society, from emperors and scholars to farmers and laborers. By the 1830s, the opium trade had reached massive proportions, with millions of Chinese addicts consuming vast quantities of the drug, imported by the East India Company. The Qing government, increasingly alarmed by the situation, attempted to curb the opium trade through stricter enforcement of existing bans and diplomatic protests. In 1834, the East India Company's charter was renewed, but without specific provisions regarding the opium trade, effectively legitimizing its continued operation. This angered the Qing government, who saw it as a deliberate affront to their sovereignty and a clear indication of British disregard for Chinese laws. In 1839, Commissioner Lin Zexu, a highly respected Qing official known for his integrity and determination, was appointed to eradicate the opium trade once and for all. Lin Zexu arrived in Canton and immediately launched a comprehensive crackdown on the opium trade, ordering the confiscation of all opium stocks held by British merchants. He demanded that all British merchants sign a bond guaranteeing they would never trade opium again, and threatened severe punishment for those who violated the agreement. British merchants, under pressure from Lin Zexu, were forced to surrender over 20,000 chests of opium, which were then publicly destroyed in a symbolic act of defiance. This act, while celebrated in China, was viewed as a blatant violation of property rights by the British government and served as the catalyst for the First Opium War, 1839 to 1842. The British, possessing superior naval technology and firepower, launched a military expedition to China, intending to force the Qing government to resume trade on favorable terms. The Chinese army, equipped with outdated weaponry and lacking effective leadership, proved no match for the British forces. British forces easily captured key coastal cities, including Canton, and threatened to advance on the capital, Beijing. The Qing government, facing a humiliating military defeat, was forced to negotiate a treaty with the British, resulting in the Treaty of Nanjing, 1842 TAR. The Treaty of Nanjing was the first of a series of unequal treaties imposed on China by Western powers, marking the beginning of China's century of humiliation. The treaty included several provisions that severely weakened China's sovereignty, including the cession of Hong Kong to Britain, the opening of 5 treaty ports to foreign trade, and the payment of a large indemnity to Britain. The treaty also granted extraterritoriality to British citizens in China, meaning they were subject to British law rather than Chinese law, effectively placing them above the jurisdiction of the Chinese legal system. The Treaty of Nanjing established a precedent for future unequal treaties with other Western powers, further eroding China's independence and control over its own affairs. Despite the treaty, the opium trade continued unabated, fueled by the insatiable demand for the drug and the greed of British merchants. The Second Opium War, 1856 to 1860, also known as the Arrow War, erupted over further disputes regarding trade and diplomatic privileges. This war involved both Britain and France, who joined forces to force China to open additional treaty ports and grant further concessions. The Chinese army suffered another humiliating defeat, leading to the Treaty of Tianjin, 1858, and the Convention of Peking, 1860. These treaties further expanded foreign influence in China, granting additional treaty ports, legal privileges, and religious freedom to foreign missionaries. The Summer Palace in Beijing was looted and burned by British and French troops, a symbolic act of destruction that further humiliated the Qing dynasty. The Opium Wars had a devastating impact on China, leading to economic decline, social unrest, and political instability. The wars exposed the weakness of the Qing dynasty and paved the way for increased foreign interference in China's internal affairs. The Opium Wars also fueled anti-foreign sentiment among the Chinese population, leading to uprisings and rebellions, such as the Taiping Rebellion. The legacy of the Opium Wars continues to shape China today, influencing its foreign policy, its national identity, and its relationship with the West. The wars serve as a stark reminder of the dangers of unequal trade, the destructive consequences of imperialism, and the importance of national sovereignty. The memory of the Opium Wars remains a potent symbol of national humiliation and a driving force behind China's determination to achieve economic and political strength.